It's an established rule among crabber captains. You can't just throw cages in other people's waters. Violators will be punished by all captains. But this Anderson kid knows what he's doing. Have you been living too long on your own? Even if someone finally finds out, instead of apologizing, he greeted his ancestors kindly. The point is that the man can't even say a word against it. Has Anderson gone this far with his lawlessness? What's the truth in it? So get your peanuts ready, and the story begins. It's been 40 days since the crab season began. Most of the ships have fulfilled their king crab quotas. Only Mariner has 15% left. There are now 25 fleets in the entire Bering Sea. At stake is a quota of 30 million snow crabs. Old White's got a secret weapon for catching snow crabs. He said it was a high-end Norwegian import. That's the end of the story and the start of the film. 206 miles northwest of Dutch Harbor, Old White has invented a whole new crabbing route. He said the route was based on the instrument. There are large, slow-moving individuals, either king crab or snow crab. Snow crabs are happy, and king crabs die where they are. Just as the crew was about to drop the crab pot, Old White stopped them, because he's about to pull out his secret weapon. It's a mini crab pot. This crab pot can be known according to the introduction on Baidu. It's made of composite material all over. It's smooth. As soon as the crab is attracted, it will fall straight down. It is suitable for detecting the number and direction of crab population in a short time. Even Clark, who always does everything he wants, thinks he's wrong. One side of the Norwegian crew is said, "It's nice but probably useless." Old White is certainly not affected by gossip. After all, he paid good money to import it in Norway. He's going to put one around each of the four corners, with the new equipment into the sea. To the Titan, 98 miles southeast. Anderson is video calling his wife and kids again. But the miserable crew worked on deck. Anderson's son's words made him chuckle. Anderson was in a good mood, but his harvest was poor. The harvest in the second cage was worse than the first. The situation also worried Anderson terribly. We need to keep going at this pace. He won't be able to meet his quota by the end of the season. The next cage I pulled out was full of king crabs. Not when I should have. Delivered when he shouldn't have. Check the GPS and Rick's boat is nearby. Anderson got the idea to collaborate. On the Lady 4 miles south. Their first harvest today was pretty dismal. Rick's boat hasn't had a good harvest for 2 days. Even Jacob doesn't believe in these waters. Anderson called while Rick was complaining. Anderson complains to Rick about his harvest. Rick sympathized with Anderson's complaints. After all, his own harvest was not so good. I didn't realize Anderson had just offered to work together. A cheer went up from the deck of the Lady. Rick burst into an excited dance. Even so, Rick is still in a good mood. Looking sad, and Anderson made a deal. Anderson on the other side has no idea he's a clown. I thought this guy was a real good Samaritan. Rick's laughing his head off here, because there were 252 of them in this cage alone. Jacob's also down there as the atmosphere crew. Rick is making Anderson limp. Anderson also said that the most important part of cooperation is trust. The Lady pulls up the second cage, and it's still a bumper harvest. Full of snow crabs dumped into plastic buckets. Not only is it delicious, but the protein is 10 times the beef. Jacob was so excited he couldn't close his mouth. Rick's already figured out a way to get to Anderson. He'll tell Anderson to head east when he does. I'll set up my crab pot and head west. And then they come back and they harvest. The most important thing now is to disguise this harvest. The Mariner, 156 miles southwest of Dutch Harbor. Jack has finally met his king crab quota for the year. Now, they're going to Dutch port for delivery. Jack feels like he's had a perfect season. Not only were no crew members hurt, the quota was met very smoothly. This has been the smoothest season of his career. He and his crew now just have to get back to Dutch Harbor. You pay the quota and you get a check for $1 million. Once you get your money, you can fish for snow crabs. Jack, who returned at exactly midnight, got a call from a friend who works at the port. He said he had some news that would save him a lot of money. Just a urine test for the entire crew. As long as no one coughs flour, you can save them 5 years of insurance money. You know, the crew is insured for at least $50,000 a year. Jack and Harley both hear this. That's a great pleasure. But I don't think the sudden mention of insurance is a good thing. With the Mariner in port, the crew opened the cargo door on the deck. The port staff arrived in time. Hallie went to the break room and told them about the physical. Most of the crew behaved unfazed, with one exception. In the wee hours of the morning, the Canyon came to the captain's room and said he did not want to check up, confessed to the fact that he coughed white granules. Jack was blindsided by the unexpected situation. Hallie quickly called his friend at the port. Give him a brief description of the situation. The friend gave them 2 solutions. One is to fire the Canyon outright. The second is to pray that he hasn't been coughing flour lately and take him for a checkup. Jack could kill a fly with that frown. After all, I have a good personal relationship with the Canyon. His daughter is engaged to her own son. I mean, that's a straight-up dismissal. A son gets a lot of money for a wife. There's another reason. It's hard to find a new crew member. The cost of training is also very high. This puts Jack, who has not yet evolved into a black-hearted capitalist, in a difficult position. 120 miles northeast-northwest. White is ready to start fishing for crab pots imported from Norway. At the same time, the old White also worried that the tool did not play in effect. After all, you can't return something this expensive. The crew on deck. Anyway, I don't expect anything from this shit. Then the crew cast the anchor hook. Old White in the captain's room explained why he wanted to buy this. The crab pot takes too long to test for crabs. It's a great way to shorten time, so you can squeeze your employees better. Now you see how the staff don't like it. The first crab pot to be retrieved was from the north. I don't see any hair on it. Then Old White sailed west. White says there's only 2 or more in this thing. That proves there's a crab colony in this place. The crew fished it out again, and there was nothing. Mr. Bai also encouraged everyone to have a little faith in high technology. I don't think the crew has any confidence in catching 2 of them. The third one was picked up and looked like there was no hair. White didn't give the crew a pep talk this time. Even he feels like he's been duped by the killer. To the 4th crab pot. With the crane force. I pulled it out and there was something in it. There were 4 of them in there. This is proof of a crab colony. Old White suddenly changed his face and began to praise this thing. After all, it was only in the water for 2 hours. Not bad for a small cage. Although the crew still felt it was useless. But Bai decided to put a crab pot here. 102 miles southeast of the Lady. Rick's already dumped all his crab pots in here. And I got a picture of what Anderson's gonna look like. He's gonna lure Anderson to the place where he harvested the other day. That place is full of king crabs, and there are no snow crabs. Nearby on the Titan, Anderson saw the ocean where Rick told him to go, because he didn't know much about that part of the ocean. So I called Rick in the neighborhood. When Rick came up, he told Anderson to go first. Look west when you're done fishing the crab pot. Anderson is an apprentice to an old man. I knew something was wrong right away. He immediately asked him why he put the crab pot there. Rick, who's not a good liar, just went down. Then Rick tried to justify himself. But the stories are crazy. Anderson doesn't believe a word of it. I did a little bit of Rick lying. Rick on the other side is still making up stories. Says the waters around here are full of sand fleas and not many crabs. The crabs are moving east to Bala Bala. Rick on Bala Bala talked a lot about it. Anderson said yes. I believe you. Rick was still happy after the call. Didn't know he was the clown. Anderson has been calling Rick's ancestors names for 18 generations. He'd already taken his crew and dropped crab pots in Rick's waters. Vowed to hit Rick hard. Back to the Mariner in Dutch Harbor. Jack finally decided to let Canyon take a urine test. In fact, Jack has a fantasy. Just arrived at the cabin, staff picked the first Canyon. Hallie thinks the job is extremely dangerous. If we get one more affected person in here, their situation will only become more dangerous. The staff then went in to talk to Harley alone. It's probably going to take a few days. Tell him not to be nervous. Bala, bala, alot. Jack followed the Canyon to the little room. We don't know what he does. It was pretty loud anyway. 180 miles northeast-northwest. The waves on this side could kill you. White wanted to see if he was being cheated today. I'm going to return this thing if it doesn't work. After all, the further the sea and the sky take a step back, the more gas. The crew cast the anchor hook. The sea breeze made the crew unsteady on their feet as the crab pot is slowly pulled out. There are quite a few crabs in the cage. I went to the sorting machine and counted more than 30 of them. This thing does work, just not very well. Suddenly a wave hit me. It's a good thing everyone's hiding. Then continue fishing for the second crab pot. There are no fewer than 30. The crew danced with joy. The amount after that's not a lot. More than 100 compliant in the last 3 cages. He just transferred the money back from the crab pot. To the old by Lil laugh made pigs howl. But the sea is getting rougher. This is a very dangerous situation. I might as well just lie down on the board. Wave after wave hit the crew. Because the waves hit so hard that the reel lost its temper. Almost put a crew member in a chokehold. Luckily, Clark reacted in time to pull the crew away. Also gave the take-up machine a Taishan top. This saved the lives of the crew and the maintenance costs of the take-up machine. The crew watched the photographer's video afterwards. Just as the harvest was strong, it was scared to death. Nothing happened for the rest of the day. Let's go over to Jack first. He will eventually face the decision to fire Canyon. That's the last thing Jack wants. And not just because Canyon was Jack's buddy. And because Canyon has a history of being unresponsive to work. But no way. There must be rules on board. Jack finally finds Canyon in the engine room. Informed him of his dismissal. All this seems to be expected in the Canyon. He gave Jack a reassuring pat on the shoulder. Then Canyon came to the room to collect things. Look at Jack's face. It's really sad. But that decision won't change with him. There was no one to see him off when the Canyon left. Harley quickly found new recruits on its job boards. The Mariner's story is over. The picture came to the Titan. Anderson is about to reveal the truth about these waters. The crab pot is pulled out of the water, and the crew cheers. Anderson was right. A half-full cage of crabs is dumped on the sorting machine. A box of crabs would sell for at least $3,000. The crew continued to cast the hook. The next round of crabs, that's a lot more than that. The sorter on the side is cramping his hands counting crabs. Anderson's about to start pouring out the test cage once it's loaded. This is what Anderson calls, you reap what you sow. The lady, 2 miles away. There haven't been more than 30 crabs in the last few cages. Rick thought it was about where he was going. He looked at the GPS and figured the numbers would pick up if we went west. But suddenly he noticed a boat nearby. Thought Anderson gave the coordinates to another ship. Anderson over here is getting the message. Anderson doesn't give a shit about Rick. The next morning, the lady took a run around the ocean last night. I didn't even see a hair. I thought I was wrong about Anderson. Just getting ready for the crab pot. Look at the float written on the T. This is the symbol of the Titan. He finally figured out why Anderson didn't text back. Why are you stealing crabs here? Anderson received an immediate greeting from Rick. Two people immediately began the ancestral greeting war. On deck, the crew looked at a cage of crabs. Couldn't stop cheering. Crab that is a wide-body fat pearls gay love full. Maybe Rick knows he's in the wrong too. Offered to divide the sea between two sides. Anderson will take the east and Rick will take the west. The two eventually reached a settlement in this way. Anderson says the battle between captains is like a game of chess. As long as we can get the initiative first, well, then this game is what you call it. The bounty on deck confirms that view. And finally, to the Mariner. Harley has hired a new crew member, Beard. The two exchanged a few pleasantries. Beard was taken on deck to learn the ropes. The Mariner moved slowly out of Dutch Harbor. Come to this period of financial inventory. First place, unsurprisingly, goes to the Lady. $1.13 million. In second place is the Mariner, which is the Air Force all day. A little unexpected. $1.05 million. Third place is the Titan. $840,000 is better than White's Harvest. Fourth place goes to Northwest. $790,000 is not far behind the Apprentice. The Fifth Thief. $730,000 never showed up for this video. Number 6 is The Witcher. $720,000 and neither issue showed up. In seventh place is the Summer Bay. $510,000 is slowly catching up. 8, of course, is the Seabrooke. $330,000 is far behind the previous few. For the rest of the story, the captain and his crew. What other stories are there? Do you want to know what happened next? Anyone who's ever been a crabber knows that. If you dare to be touched by the waves, don't say die directly in place. High and low need to get a concussion. But there was a man on the Lady, hit by the waves 4 times. He had to be admitted to the ICU each time. But I always get to work on time. It's like the chosen worker's Eucharist. Should I call it bad luck or bad luck? He was hit by a wave again today. Things are worse than ever. The captain is ready for the table. Do you think he's going to make it this time? So next, get the peanuts. Let me explain it to you. 203 miles from Dutch Harbor aboard the Seabrooke. Sophia thought back to her father. Sophia's father was a great captain, but he never told Sophia about crabbing. Never wanted Sophia to be a crabber. But after my father died, Sophia wants to know more about her father. He eventually followed his father's best friend Greg on this path. Sophia probably lacked confidence at school, but ever since I followed Greg to the boat, Sophia seems to have found her way. She was determined to be as great a captain as her father. The picture came to Thief. There was a mess on the glass in the captain's cabin. Well, that's not a good catch on deck. Currently, Captain Nathan has a quota of 14,000 pounds. Although the situation is urgent, but his anniversary with his wife is more urgent. Nathan decided to take his wife on land to celebrate this time. After all, 7 straight years at sea. One more time at sea, and the wife might pickle Nathan. During the conversation, Nathan plotted another route. He said the route looked like a wedding ring. I don't see any of it. Anyway, so the crew went on working after a miserable day. Bait the crab pot and throw it into the sea. Nathan suddenly realized that his route was stupid. I chose it because I looked like a ring. The crew got the couple a nice treat. They held up the float that said Happy 6th Anniversary. Give them both a shout at the end. Despite the scarcity of the sea, the crew also gave the two a big surprise. Almost made Nathan's wife cry. This does not give the crew a promotion or a raise. The crab pot is thrown into the sea with a float with blessing written on it. Hopefully, this can bring them good luck. 56 miles southwest of Westbrook. A poor harvest on the deck. This cage doesn't even pay for a foot of gas. A little better in the second cage. Greg's gonna go bald at this rate. So he decided to head against the wind for the crab pot that was released yesterday. It's a pretty risky decision for Greg. After all, the waves are 18 feet high right now. He gave Sophia a few tips and went back to bed. Look at the wind and waves on the deck is not small. A lot of annoyance for the staff. With the employee, the anchor hook is thrown. Take up gear, slowly running. Just dump the crab, and the crew slipped a hand. It puts a sweet smell on Megan's angry mouth. Greg, who just came up on the side, looked dumbstruck. So Sophia told him what had happened. Greg asked Megan if everything was okay. I don't know how Megan smells when it comes to Greg. Greg was so angry that he lashed out at Megan. Look at Megan's face. She's almost crying. I turned my head and worried that I'd freak Sophia out. Back to the side of Sophia, to a modest. I can't tell who's real. Sophia looked at a sad Megan. I thought of my father. Her father died of a heart attack. He loved his family and he was good to his crew. But he did not escape the illness in the end. That's when Sophia would say things were so unpredictable. The deck crew also packed the bait. Sophia follows her own path. Had the crew drop crab pots. 88 miles northeast of the Lady. The weather is not so good here at Rick. The waves are black and blue when they touch them. Rick was worried that the bad weather would interfere with the plan, because Anderson took it a little hard last time, so he still has 250,000 pounds of crabs to catch. The crew cast an anchor hook from the deck. Turn with the take-up machine. The first crab of the day comes out of the water. But it's not looking so good, is it? When you look at the sorting machine, it's mostly minors. There were 12 qualified in the cage at last count. The random crew cast the second spear. The second harvest was even more dismal. Rick's not going to be able to pay the loan at this rate. All of a sudden, there's a big wave that's just a little bit off. It wasn't exciting enough for the Nick kid. Next thing you know, Captain Rick was talking about the last time Nick got hurt. You know, if Rick even mentions getting hurt, the crew named will be dead the next minute. Not surprisingly, the waves got bigger and bigger. Look, Rick's got bad luck in his mouth. The man on the deck, Nick, got all fucked up. Get up and run to the cabin. Rick insinuates that his mouth is not good enough. Nit in the infirmary was shaking and clutching his ankle. The crew came to Rick and berated him. It was not locating the waves in time that got Nit hurt. Rick tried to argue, but the crew didn't buy it. Just tell him to get to the infirmary and check on Nit. Nit was in so much pain he couldn't take off his socks. Rick went up to ask about Nit. Nit replied that his foot hurt like it was broken. Even now, it's hard for Nit to move. The crew next door has a bad way. I might have to work 2 jobs. The waves on the sea gradually calmed down. This whole thing happening all of a sudden is giving Rick a headache too. It was a lot less than the quota, and now it's 1 less person. You'll be fined if you don't meet your quota. Rick has been in this situation before. Every time I think about it, I get chills in my back. With a description of the infirmary by Neat, I felt like I was going under the waves. I'm lucky I hit a railing and survived. Then, Nit was carried to his room by Jacob to rest. Thief, 32 miles southwest. Nathan's about to start fishing for crab pots. This harvest is directly related. Nathan was wondering if he could go home with his wife for our anniversary. Force with take-up machine. The crab pot rises slowly. Pull up the deck and see the harvest is not very good. Nathan's mood hit rock bottom when he saw this harvest. If the harvest continues at this rate, let's not go back to the mainland for our anniversary. I can't even make an anniversary at sea. So Nathan came up with a good idea. He asked the crew what day it was on the radio. Some say Monday and some say Wednesday. But Nathan said it was Thursday. Now we all know what Nathan's up to. He's moving his wife's phone back 2 days. That was the way Nathan got the hang of it. His crewman Freddie called up. Give him the task of timing your wife's phone. Said she'd get a raise if she did it right. Nathan could only pray twice to calm himself. After all, if this were found out, his wife decided to throw him into the sea to feed the fish. Luckily, my wife, who was cooking, didn't notice. Freddie's mission was a success. Nathan can't even keep his mouth shut. It's not normal to reverse time on the time thief. 56 miles southwest of the Seabrooke. The waves are as wild as ever, although Greg has slowed things down quite a bit. But the deck was rough and stormy. Besides, I haven't done much here before, so they collect the crab pots and leave immediately. There is always a steady stream of waves in this sea. Even Sophia admits it. It was the worst sea he had ever seen. The crab pot on the deck is slowly pulled out of the water. There are quite a few crabs in there, and the crabs are nice looking and big. Looks like they were wrong about this ocean. Look at the look of this crab pot, and it's worth at least $2,000. Sophia was so excited to start barking like a monkey. Even a few cages are a good harvest. It's just that the weather here is still too bad. It affects the efficiency of the crew. Did Greg teach Sophia how to swing with a boat? Cut the impact of the waves a little bit. Suddenly, a huge wave hit. Sophia needs to tell everyone to be careful. Fortunately, the warning was timely and no crew members were injured. Greg was pleased with Sophia's performance. The crew on deck threw a spear line. I haven't seen much of Sophia. The thought of the huge waves just now sends a chill down my spine. I'm glad Greg was there to calm my nerves. Turn with the take-up machine. The Seabrooke has a quota of 20,000 pounds left. She had to keep everyone safe at the last minute. There are many more crabs in this cage than before. The picture came to the lady. The crew was still hard at work late at night. The very organized work that was originally scheduled. It's a little confusing because of Nit's injury. The guy who should be operating the crane is hanging bait. Rick is very worried that this situation will continue. It would cause chaos in crew scheduling. After all, the ship was built with a crew of 6. Lost a Matt who discriminated against Jacob. I managed to adjust my work very well. Now Net's injured and can't work. This situation puts black capitalist Rick in a difficult position. I say go get a Bible from Greg. He's trying to get Nate to work, but I do have my own pot for injuries. The 4 people who are now treated like cattle and horses are also a little dissatisfied. Put in the last crab pot. Everybody clean up and go to rest. Back in the lounge, Jacob expressed his displeasure. Rick thought for a moment that he still wanted Nit to work. He went to the lounge and asked about Nit's injury. Of course Nit knows what he's up to. He immediately answered that he could walk normally. It'll be back to work tomorrow. And Henry blah 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 blah. After all, we still have Nit to work for. Thief, 50 miles southwest. Today is the anniversary of November 4th. Nathan's wife has no idea, because all the clocks on Thief show number 2. Nathan also talked to his wife about booking a 5-star hotel for our anniversary. You know, you're fooling your wife. Nathan's got 10,000 pounds left on his quota. Then there was good news from the deck. This pot of king crabs is large and numerous. It's the same recipe for the next pot. The crabs are wide, fat, and full of energy and passion. That's what Nathan wanted. Next is a bumper harvest, and the crew is screaming with excitement. But then came the call from the port. The staff asked Nathan. Quotas must be submitted on the 7th. Nathan was confused. Wasn't it due by 12 o'clock on the 6th? The port officer replied that 2 ships had been involved in an accident. The port is now scrambling to maintain order. That's a big worry for Nathan. He promised his wife he'd be back on the 6th. His wife might smack him if he breaks his promise. The so-called human sorrows and joys are different. It's a busy time on deck. The crew was very excited about the good harvest. After all, the crab is big and fat. There will be an additional bonus when the quota is submitted. That's an average of $50,000 per person. The Seabrooke, 54 miles southwest. Greg has already met 99% of his quota. We just need to finish the last pot of crabs. The last of the crabs on board. Greg asked Sophia to announce the return. Heard we're back at 8 o'clock tomorrow morning. The crew were incredibly excited. All I need is a swim in the ocean. Sophia is happy to have spent the season with them. Pour out the last pot of crabs and count. There are more than 30. Sophia has been working out for a season. A lot more mature than when I first got here. The lady 36 miles northeast. And Neat's injury is almost healed. But why did Jacob get a hairbrush plug? Yulik says they still have 65 crab pots in the water. Just hope Net's leg gets better now. He doesn't want to miss another delivery date. And he was fined a lot of money. The crew dressed up in the lounge. Nit limped onto the deck. I don't know why I look funny. You can get back to work after a while. As Jacob throws the anchor hook, take up machine slowly force. The crab pot is slowly pulled into the boat. Turns out there's not even a hair, let alone a crab. With the take up machine again force. Crab hairs are starting to appear in the second cage. But the size of the crab is a little touching. But at least Net can work and things aren't so bad. The camera pans to a harbor. Nathan is preparing a love breakfast for his wife. Your wife doesn't hate you, but she doesn't want to eat you. Although I can't go back to the port to stay in a hotel due to regulations. But Nathan was still prepared for the ceremony. I'm a little tired of being single. We have footage of the Seabrooke. Sophia was officially made a first officer by Greg. It was also announced that Seabrooke's journey for the season was officially over. Here comes the current financial report inventory. First Lady number, $1.16 million in the lead. The second Mariner, $1.08 million, not to be outdone. Just see if we can get past the Lady. The Titan in third place, $940,000 to the White Hundred. Fourth place, Northwest, $820,000 to congratulate. The fifth Thief, $820,000, is within a hair's breadth of the Northwest. The sixth Witch, $760,000, is a little decadent. Seventh place, the Summer Bay, $530,000 for an old man with cancer. In last place is the Seabrooke, which has completed its journey. For the rest of the story, the captain and his crew. What other stories are there? Do you want to know what happened next?